Hello, passengers. Welcome aboard Long Walk Talks Lost. This is your pilot speaking. My name is David Hensley, and I am the owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions. And tonight I am joined by my two co-pilots,
Robert Bradford
and Cara Hayes.
And we might be a week late, but we are talking about the next three episodes in this batch of our season 3 rewatch as part of our Lost 20-year retrospective. That was a lot of words that I just used for a very simple sentence. I'm very sorry about that.
All the context for our listeners.
All the context, and it only takes like a week for me to get out of practice doing this, as it turns out. Anyway, these 3 episodes are 304, Every Man for Himself, 305, The Cost of Living, and 306, I Do. But before we dive in, we had a themed dinner. And this time, for this batch of episodes, it was Nashville hot chicken, ostensibly because there's a Sawyer episode in here and he's from Tennessee.
Sure.
What did we think about? Close enough. Any excuse we can.
We were kind of reaching on this one. We spent a lot of time going back and forth with ideas.
Yeah, our themed dinner ideas might start getting less creative as time goes on. We might have to play that out, like themed cocktail menu instead. I don't know. We'll figure that out by around the end of the season.
Yep.
When we take our hiatus. What did you guys think? We had Dave's Hot Chicken here in Rock Hill. Robert, what did you think?
It felt like it's like those things you have when you're a kid, those like fun dips, where you have like the powdered sugar. The seasoning was like that on the chicken, just like a powder that just coats your mouth with every bite. It was, I'm not much of a spicy foods guy, so maybe I was expecting like the chicken itself is going to be like seasoned a little, but mainly it's like going to be a glaze or something it's cooked in that makes it hot, and it's just like, no, we have just coated this thing in like a fine layer of seasoned powder. Granted, I went mild, so maybe I wasn't getting the full experience.
Yeah, Cara, what about you?
It definitely, you didn't want to bite and breathe in at the same time because that could hurt a lot. I did a medium and a hot because I couldn't decide. And I have to say, the hot was legit hot. I was very excited for that. I don't know that I will try anything beyond that, even though I am very much a spicy foods person. But I'm a little afraid. And I also, the chicken tender, that thing was enormous.
They do give you a full-size portion. I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah, I looked at the menu and saw that it was a 2-piece chicken tender and thought, what the hell? That's not going to be enough to feed me. And I ended up eating 1 full tender and half of my sandwich. So it was a lot. I agree. The seasoning on it was a lot. I also weenied out and didn't go Nashville hot, but I've also had Nashville hot chicken before when I was in Nashville, and I made it 2 pieces into a 4-piece tray and regretted every minute of it. It was very tasty. It was also very hot, and I was drinking Miller Lite, not sponsored, to cool it down. So after pounding like 4 Miller Lights back to back, the whole thing turned out to be not a very smart idea on my part.
Yeah. Now, I did put honey on mine, and I really did like that. Yeah, I won't say it tempered any of the heat, but it did give it a nice quality.
That does sound pretty good.
Yeah. Recommend if you try it again.
Well, diving into things that are from Nashville, or from Tennessee, I guess. Episode 304, Every Man for Himself. It's days 70 and 71, and this is a Sawyer episode. Probably one of my favorites, because this is the episode where Sawyer gets Sawyered. It's great. And
it's the peak of Ben outdoing the cast members at the things that we've seen them do for 3 seasons, to the point that I almost half expected him to, like, during one of his conversations with Jack, be like, well, Jack, you fail to realize that the growth on the L35 section is really going to be missing, that he would actually just reveal that he's actually got superior medical knowledge to Jack, too.
Yeah. I wrote it down much later in the notes because it took a while for me to realize that these 3 episodes we're discussing run on dramatic irony. And we get a taste of that right off the bat during Juliet's conversation with Jack, in which she tells Jack, referring to Ben, we make decisions together. And I just wrote down, Well,
And I think while you're typing that, Ben walks into the room and immediately is like, Juliet, I need you to come here right now. Or just walks in and flatly gives her an order.
yeah. And naturally, this being a Sawyer episode, Sawyer episodes are when we get the best nickname watches, honestly. So for here, we get Pickett nicknamed Chinatown. You guys understand that reference?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Oh. Jack Nicholson gets his nose broken in Chinatown.
Is it broken or cut?
It's cut open across the bridge and spends half the movie with a now iconic bandage across the bridge of his nose.
Oh.
That's where you get the great line, "It only hurts when I breathe."
Oh, wonderful.
And then, slightly less creative, he later also refers to Pickett as Broken Nose Man. He has been beaten up a lot at this point in the episode, so I'm just going to chalk it up to that.
Brain damage.
Yeah,
not being his best work. And then later in the episode, he refers to Munson, the guy that he's in prison with, we'll get to that in a second, as Costanza, a little Seinfeld reference for you, and also as Murgatroyd, which I understand the reference, the phrase heavens to Murgatroyd, but I do not know what show that is from or what this is referencing.
Yeah, I've only ever heard it as a reference to something that existed before, but I've never known the origin of that one.
The only thing I can remember is there was a cartoon that I could not tell you. It was like they were like a band, and one of the characters used to say heavens to Murgatroyd or something. I don't know.
From a cartoon named Jellystone?
Oh, yeah, that might be it. Is it a
Okay.
bunch of...
is the characteristic catchphrase of Snagglepuss.
Snagglepuss.
Yep.
There you go.
There you go. Snaggle... As originally voiced by Dawes Butler, Snagglepuss seeks quasi-Shakespearean turns of phrase. There's a sentence that you hadn't heard prior to tonight. You're welcome. Just a quick little bit of backstory, like in episode for this turn for Sawyer. The flashback is he is in prison because his ex-girlfriend dropped dime on him. And he comes up with a plan to con a man out of money that he stole from the government. And it plays well in here because once again we get to see Sawyer doing his best work. But when we're not there, we're on the island. And Robert, you made a note here.
Well, just that we've seen in the first 3 episodes Jack kind of becoming more compliant in his captivity, like sitting against the wall when Juliet's going to enter, like dropping any sense of like aggression or hostility. But in kind of a fun turn, he becomes the Henry Gale of this situation. Like we referenced it a minute ago, but poking at Juliet being subservient to Ben. She's like, "Oh, you only do what he tells you?" And we get to see a little more of that across, which is a fun note for Matthew Fox to get to play, to kind of do mind games after he and Locke were on the receiving end of them so much in season 2.
Well, back in terms of dramatic irony, as we follow Sawyer and Kate on the island in their polar bear cages. I think it's when they start leading Jack away to save Pickett's wife, Colleen. Yeah, Colleen, who was shot by Son at the end of episode 2. As they're taking him away, Sawyer remarks to Kate, "We just got our ticket out of here." At which point I wrote down, well, not quite, because at the end of this episode, he's going to find out they're on a completely different island than everyone else.
You've been Alcatrazed, Sawyer.
The flashback of this episode gives us 2 more great guest stars. Bill Duke has made famous in films like Predator and
he's excellent in
Commando.
The Limey with Terrence Stamp. He's a CIA agent who just has the most hilarious delivery of "oops" as he drops a secret folder in front of a guy who's really not supposed to see it.
Fantastic. I love him so much. This man is instantly recognizable if you've seen 80s action movies.
Oh, yeah.
And it also gets to bring back Kim Dickens as Sawyer's ex-girlfriend, whose name I don't remember. Cassidy. That's right. Thank you.
And as we learned, Sawyer's baby mama.
Yes. Although he tries to deny it, he has a little girl named Clementine. The idea of Sawyer with a daughter named Clementine is the most fucking adorable thing to come out of this show, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. We also get because Sawyer's ticket out of here plan is references a plan he's formed to basically use the shock mechanism in the polar bear cage to zap anyone who tries to open the door. And when he tries to pull this on Ben reveals that he cut the power before even coming there, and then whips out a baton and beats the crap out of Sawyer. Like, our first glimpse that Ben is actually a severe physical threat as well, like, which, you know, we've seen him as a thinker and a manipulator, but no, Michael Emerson has some action chops that he gets to bust out, not for the last time.
It's true, but for Ben, the beatdowns that he gets to deliver to other people are few and far between. And I wrote down here in the notes, he finally gets to beat up someone else. Even like once as the show goes on, even up until season 6, he is just the punching bag of the group. So even though it's beloved Sawyer that he's beating up, it's nice to see him get some punches in.
I made a note here and do not remember what I was referring to, but Paulo is full of insight into Hurley's psyche. I think it's just one of the exchanges he and Nikki have where they're just like, oh, there's Hurley doing his thing again. Setting them up as just the audience surrogates, like the two people who have just been watching everybody else this whole time.
They are still trying so hard to shoehorn Nikki and Paolo into the show, and I think it's working. I really appreciate the dynamic that those two bring to the table.
Really?
Uh-huh. Totally.
Tell me another lie.
I hope they're here until the end of the show.
I hope they die.
You don't mean that. They're the new Boone and Shannon.
Nope.
Lovable, plucky, young, attractive couple.
Oh, wait. Boone and Shannon. Yeah, I'll say that. Okay, because I totally wanted them to die, too.
Here's my horrible confession. Just by the end of this stretch of 6 episodes that we've covered so far in season 3, I'm kind of getting a kick out of Nikki and Paulo. Just the idea, and more as we get into the later episodes, but of just two people who are talking like the audience does. You know, next episode when they're going out to the plane, they're like, oh yeah, that's where Echo's brother was, just because they remembered that episode. They get to the station with all the monitors, and Nikki asks the question that I'm sure a bunch of people in the forums did. It's a cute thing that the idea of them having always been there is clunky, but once you're just into their dynamic, it's just sort of nobody else reacts to them, but they just insert themselves into all these conversations. I don't know if that's going to be something I still find endearing for the rest of their time on this show, but for right now, I'm kind of tickled by it.
Well, it would have been such an easy fix in retrospect, like episode 2, to just have them come up to somebody and be like, listen, there was a bright flash of light in the sky. People are trying to murder us. There have been hunting parties and polar bears. We're tired of being on the sidelines. Include us into some shit.
I can't remember if this was a theory at the time, but I wonder if anybody ever speculated that, like, they might have not been there before the flash of light, that there are literally two people who snapped into existence following the magnetic event.
I mean, that is literally true from the writing and casting perspective.
But like in the actual realm of it, it's like, no, these two people weren't like that. One, like Desmond is the only person who's like, those two weren't part of your cast, brother.
But you know, that honestly would have made more sense. I would have appreciated that more, because they could have been like, what the fuck? Where are we?
Well, after Sawyer gets the shit beat out of him, courtesy of Ben's baton, he wakes up on a makeshift operating table with a new hole in his body that shouldn't be there.
The jigsawification of the others continues.
It's true. Somehow, Ben and co. installed a pacemaker into Sawyer's heart through a tiny slash in his ribs, and also installed an even tinier pacemaker in a rabbit so that they could demonstrate to him what happens if his heart rate gets too high, above 140 beats per minute.
It was very distressing to watch.
In retrospect, this plot twist should have been a lot more obvious, because this episode already establishes that the closest thing to a surgeon they have among their group is Juliet, and she freely admits to Jack that she is not at all qualified for that kind of thing.
Well, and also, I am no medical doctor. I think it's probably a lot harder to install a pacemaker than just cutting one incision and then the person receiving it waking up still fully clothed in the clothes that they were knocked out in. And I have to imagine it's even harder to install a tiny one in a rabbit's heart.
That is kind of the one downside of this episode, is that you wish we got a little more skepticism from Sawyer on this plan, that he's supposed to be the crafty con man, and I wish Ben had to make one or two more moves to get ahead of him instead of immediately convincing Sawyer that this had happened and then being ahead of him the rest of the time.
He does get to comment, though, we're not killers, James. At which point, again, I wrote down, well, you did send a guy who killed Steve and broke every bone in his body, apparently. And other guys who killed at least 2 people in the Taylor camp and attempted to string up Charlie.
I was going to say, it's not like Ethan was anticipating Jack getting there in time to CPR smash him back to life.
And he also says this, is it right before or right after shaking that bunny, quote unquote, to death?
Which we again later find out was a trick, but yeah, so it's...
I remembered this twist and was sitting there having reassuring Cara and Robert's wife Gina that the bunny was going to be fine, because you could feel the distress in the room as Ben continued to shake the bunny cage.
He literally kills a small animal. He's really establishing his villain bona fides this season, or does he?
But then the animal is actually alive and part of a con, further establishing him as a criminal mastermind. It works on many levels.
Yeah. So the whole gimmick of it is that if Sawyer's heart rate goes above a certain level, the pacemaker will cause his heart to explode, essentially. So it's been kind of shutting down any attempt that Sawyer might make to fight his way out or come up with any ingenious escape plans. But of course, Sawyer is also in a cage across from the woman he is incredibly hot for. So we have a totally plot-relevant scene of Kate changing clothes in full view of Sawyer and the audience. But it's not just a chance to give, Evangeline Lilly more back nudity. It's totally plot relevant. Mm-hmm. I never thought I would be this guy, but even I'm just looking back and being like, wow, this is just really blatant that the writers needed to give her decided that they needed to give her one of these scenes every 2 episodes.
It was as much as they could get away with on network TV. At the time, I think we've had this discussion on here before about what this show would look like if it were on, say, HBO, and it would have been tits galore.
Oh yeah,
Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
on an island.
Which of the male cast members do you think we would have gotten frontal nudity from?
Josh Holloway.
Josh Holloway, definitely Echo, because I've seen Oz. That guy had no limits to what he would do.
Wait, I need to watch Oz now. Okay.
Yeah, he's gonna awaken things in you in very unsettling ways.
Jesus Christ, listeners, the look on Cara's face was upsetting.
Oh.
It's him, J.K. Simmons, the Allstate Chaos guy, and Carmela Soprano in a prison. It's amazing.
Oh, shit.
Oh, and Michael's in it. Harold Perrineau's on this show.
Nice. There was an episode early in season 1 where Sawyer walked out of the water onto the beach completely naked. I think it was in front of Hurley.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2025 Lost on a premium channel. He would have, to quote It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, hung dong.
We also get it's in the flashbacks. Cassidy asks Sawyer to write a letter to his daughter, and he shoots that idea down very harshly. It's not called on because I don't think they've made a direct reference to this in a while, but the reference to the Mr. Sawyer letter that he once said it was the only letter he was ever planning to write. Just a reminder that of the course he set himself on, that he wants the letter he wrote to be the thing that defines him as, the one who avenges his parents, but doesn't like being reminded that no, he's taking another step towards becoming just another bad destroyer of families. Wow, I had a lot of notes for this section for a while. I was just typing. It's cool that, when Colleen comes back, even though Jack's a prisoner and the others are trying to establish their power over him, when they have someone who suffered a major gunshot wound, Jack has a skill set that makes him valuable. It was kind of the basis for his leadership on the island because he was the one taking charge in the event of a major disaster. And now kind of their attempts to keep him on his back foot get ruined because they really want him to try to save someone's life.
Well, and also there's the Hippocratic Oath of it all.
Yeah. And it gives him a moment to, as he's scrubbing in for the procedure, to look up and notice some x-rays on the wall, which he doesn't comment on, but clearly recognizes before going in. It's interesting that after the first 3 episodes of the season sort of established the others as being in complete control of everything up until one of them gets shot. This kind of continues further with they are just people on an island. They've got more resources than the main cast we've been following, but they still only have one crappy medical facility, limited supplies, and they can't just magically undo a major bullet wound. So just a reminder that, these people do have their limits, and we're finding out that they can run against them just like the characters we've followed.
Well, those medical limitations end up with, I was about to say poor Colleen, but there's not really a lot of evidence for us to call her poor Colleen. She dies as a result of her injuries and Jack's lack of proper medical equipment to help her, which results in her husband, Danny, a.k.a. Chinatown, a.k.a. Broken Nose Man, storming over to Sawyer's bear cage and beating the shit out of him again. And once again, Evangeline Lilly is flip-flopped back onto the side of hysterical woman as she just clings to the bars of her cage and screams and cries out for Sawyer.
And the beating finally stops when Pickett, after asking, "Do you love him? Do you love him?" over and over again, because that's, what's on his mind right now. And Kate finally screams, "Yes, I love him," while throwing her arms through the bar around Sawyer's beaten, rain-soaked body. Somehow managing not to tear his shirt open to really make the paperback pulp novel cover come to life, but
there's fan fiction out there that covers that, I'm certain.
We've been hard on Evangeline Lilly, but the writing that Evangeline Lilly had to do, give her credit. She does some amazing stunt climbing, because she does shimmy up the walls of her cage through an opening in it and then back down, and her face is pretty clearly in frame through all of it, so it's clearly Evangeline Lilly doing this. And then she does it all again from the outside to get back in, which, yes, she climbs back into the cage she just escaped from. So impressive for the actress, less impressive writing for the character.
Yeah, because once again, I wrote down here in the notes, this might be the dumbest Kate has ever been thus far. There's still, 3.5 seasons to go. She could be even dumber, and I don't remember it, but she is out. She has escaped from her cage. Everyone else's attention is elsewhere. At Sawyer's prodding when he's telling her to run, she should have fucking run. It's been established. We've talked about it on here before. That's the one thing that Kate is good at. And instead, her dumbass decides to climb right back in the cage across from Sawyer.
Even if she wants to run and get Saeed and Locke and and for all she knows, the hatch and all of its guns are still there. Come back with a rescue team. This does not mean you abandon them forever. That said, kind of the button on the scene is when she climbs back in while Sawyer's shouting for her to run just to leave him, and he yells, "Every man for himself." Kate climbs back into the cage and just looks at him and says, "Live together, die alone." And I don't want to harp on this every episode, but a version of Kate that had a good character arc about learning not to run and become part of a community and really put herself on the line for others, that would have been a very satisfying moment if the writers had given us that. I just kind of hate when they occasionally switch back into a Kate that might have been.
Yeah, very much so.
Fun line from Jorge Garcia back in the side plot where Desmond is building what turns out to be a lightning rod to prevent Claire's tent from getting struck by lightning. And Hurley, watching him set this up, just goes, "Is that art?" But says it in a way that isn't just confused, he doesn't want to seem like he doesn't know that it's art, that he's trying to sound impressive and sophisticated about it. I don't know why, but the spin Jorge Garcia puts on that was just really fun for me.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about it yet because it's more of the C plot, which these episodes don't usually have. Well, if the A plot is Sawyer's gotten a pacemaker and can't get horny, and the B plot is Jack has to save a dying woman, the C plot, way back at the survivors' camp, is that Desmond is still getting glimpses of the future, which include lightning striking Claire's tent.
While Charlie is in there with her.
Uh-huh. So, yeah, that's why he goes out of his way to build a lightning rod out of a golf club. Fun stuff. And there's going to be a lot more of that throughout this season. Which, in my opinion, firmly establishes Desmond as the new king of B-plots on this show.
They're clearly just having fun with him as a new presence, a new cast member to bounce other characters off of. And, Henry and Cusick, it was the breakout of season 2. Yeah, it's in a season that starts to feel a little bit stale and wheel spinning, he is the fresh element for so much of it.
Yeah, and so at the end of the flashback, we find out that Sawyer successfully conned the guy who stole money from the government out of the location of said money, which he then turned over to the warden, who gave it to the authorities. And as a reward, they give Sawyer a portion of it, but instead of accepting it for himself, he has it set aside in a trust for his newborn daughter, Clementine, which prompts the warden, Bill Duke's character, to tell him, "You just lied and cheated your way out of prison." A line which is a lot less ironic in 2025 than it was in 2007.
Now I'm wondering what position would Sawyer hold in the Trump administration after he, impressed everybody with his going to prison for fraud and felony things?
Obviously, like security chief.
Oh yeah, like deputy director of the ATF or something.
100%, yeah.
We do eventually get Ben does reveal that the pacemaker was a trick. They just gave Sawyer an incision. And to cap this off, he actually pulls a rabbit out of his bag. Like, he reveals the trick he's played on Sawyer literally by flourishing a rabbit like a magician. It's such an impish moment for Ben.
It really is. And as much as we dislike him at this moment, it is really satisfying to watch Sawyer be on the receiving end of a con for once.
He tries to quote, I think it's Of Mice and Men, which we saw him reading in prison, to Ben as sort of like a jab. And then Ben, later in the conversation, pulls out a much longer quote and then mocks Sawyer for not recognizing it. Sawyer at one point is like, "Why did you do all this?" And Ben's answer is that, well, you get a con man's respect by conning him. But the honest answer is Ben did it for the lulz. He does it all for the lulz.
It's true.
I would too if I was a diabolical mastermind.
Well, you watch enough TV and you start to wonder if you could ever pull off a Machiavellian plot like this. And, knock on wood, the opportunity has never presented itself. And hopefully... Yet. I mean, hopefully a situation never arises in my life in which I need to run this kind of elaborate con on somebody. But I'd like to think that if it did, I could.
Oh, I don't think I could.
Anyway... Moving on to episode 305, The Cost of Living. It's days 71 through 72, and this is an Echo episode.
The last Echo episode.
I'm glad I didn't remember that this was the last one, because I thought I had more time, but I'm glad I didn't remember.
I think we all thought we had more time. I don't remember it being this early in the season. I knew this was the season that he died. I just remember it being closer to the middle, not episode 5.
I remembered it mainly just because it hit me really hard watching it for the first time, and then reading about it. Apparently, the actor hadn't even wanted to come back after season 2. He just because he's a British Nigerian actor, but he lives in London, and having to be in Hawaii for filming was just taking a toll on him. Apparently, he had a death in the family. So he initially just was like, I'll do one season and that's it. And they managed to convince him to come back so they could write it out. They didn't. But the ending of season 2, where they were clearly leaving themselves the option of, like, if he dies in the hatch implosion, then he dies in the hatch implosion and we can do that. But thankfully they do get an episode to kind of, it's rushed, but to sort of tie off the story of Mr. Echo.
Yeah, Echo dying in the hatch implosion wouldn't have made sense considering Desmond, John, and Charlie all survived it. But also, he has had nothing to do up until this point other than lie around and get carried and say cryptic things in his sleep.
Even watching those earlier scenes, I'm not sure they didn't use a body double for some of the scenes where Locke and Charlie are carrying, because his head is bowed and you don't have that many scenes where his face is fully visible in frame.
Yeah. Talk to us about this opening, Robert.
So in the opening, we see Echo and his brother Yemi when they're kids, presumably before Echo was taken by the soldiers or the militia who made him into the man he grew up to be. He breaks open the lock on what looks like a pantry for the church to steal food for himself and Yemi. They get caught, and the nun tells him that he has to confess. And Echo says he doesn't think he has to confess because he's not sorry because he was just hungry. And the nun tells him, "You have sinned, Echo. Hunger does not matter," which is a nice setup for the whole theme of the episode, which is, for all the horrible things Echo has done in his life, how much does he have to feel bad for, given what little choice he had in the world he lived in and his place in it?
And we'll talk about that more at the end of the episode, because I definitely have thoughts on Echo's send-off. But in terms of like just episode structure, it starts with the typical previously on Lost recap. And then a few minutes into the episode, we are treated to another recap of Mr. Echo's first episode, like first centric episode flashbacks. Just everything through like having to kill somebody so that Yemi wouldn't have to, through joining the mercenaries in the militia and accidentally ending up as a priest. We get that all in like another 30, 45-second recap.
It's interesting that for a show that does as much with time and structure and flashback that as Lost does, they very rarely have just those kinds of cutaways where like a character will look and we'll have like an insert shot of the thing they're remembering or thinking about. Usually it's just an entire flashback or an entire thing set aside, like with the other 48 days. So yeah, when they do something like that, it does stick out. So we also get when Echo wakes up in the tent where he's been recovering after Locke and Charlie brought him back from the polar bear cave. He wakes up and sees Yemi, who tells him he has to go out and... I forget exactly what he tells him, but he sends Echo heading out towards the wreckage of the plane. And it's been debatable up till now, but I think we can all agree at this point that's 100% not Yemi at this point. This is something else on the island taking Yemi's shape and talking to Echo as if he is his brother.
And I think we're all pretty sure that this is the smoke monster.
Yeah.
Like 99.9%. Because they're still fuzzy on the rules, but his body has gone missing from the Beechcraft. So...
yeah, it's very interesting to watch at this point and try to figure out like when they lock certain things in. And we can talk a little more at the end of the episode when we get to like what the plan for Echo might have been. But yeah, the idea that the smoke monster can take human form, but only for people who were dead when they came to the island, between that and Christian Shepherd seems like something they've nailed down.
Yeah. And it's a nice setup for what's going to happen later on, a few seasons from now. But like at the end of the last episode, I said that it was really satisfying to see Ben out Sawyer. Here now Ben gets out jacked. Gonna need
go for it.
Yeah.
Commit.
Yeah. He gets out jacked by Jack. God damn it. He gets stumped by Jack.
There you go.
Yeah. God, fucking wordplay. Yes, Jack flips it on him because he has figured out that the x-rays he saw in the last episode were Ben's and that Ben has a tumor on his spine. I don't know if there's a good place to have a tumor on your spine, but wherever it is on Ben's is not one of those places.
It's overall, these couple episodes are pretty good for both Jack and Locke. Just after they spent so much of season 2 kind of bouncing off each other's personalities, to see them sort of take control of their surroundings individually, both as Locke steps up as the leader with everybody else away and just very quickly and methodically organizes this expedition to go out and check the one of the other stations to see if they can establish communication. And Jack, using the limited resources he has to gain some psychological leverage on Ben.
Well, when it's time for the beach party to go in search of Mr. Echo, Nikki and Paolo, well, first Nikki volunteers to go along with them and Paolo reluctantly, and I just wrote, oh, good, Nikki's going to do something.
And that's when my note got put lower because never mind. But yes, I'm just excited to finally have new people to hate.
Because it has been a little while since this is another line where I forget the context of it, but I want to say they're talking about the Beechcraft landing on there and like, oh, wow, it's like, it must be like fate or something. That I think Nikki says that, and Locke says, don't mistake coincidence for fate, which he is echoing Echo, who said that to him last season.
Echoing Echo, out-Sawyering Sawyer, out-Jacking Jack. There's a lot of that going on in these episodes.
When we get to Stranger in a Strange Land, we can just talk about how the writers really cated that one up.
Love that. Just a technical note. The Mexico filter has become a joke for people online. Whenever you watch anything set in South America, they put on the brownish orange filter to let you know that you are south of the border. And here they do a really harsh orange filter on everything set in Nigeria, but the filter itself wasn't enough. Whoever color graded this episode decided that they were also going to blow out the highlights, so everyone has a weird reflection on them. I hated it. I don't know if this is the sort of thing people who have never had to color grade film before would ever even notice, but it drove me insane every time we flashed back to Nigeria because I was like, why the fuck? Was the one filter not enough? You had to blow out the highlights as well. It's a nerdy technical thing, but it drove me insane. Sorry.
Glad you got that off your chest.
Thank you. This podcast is a platform for my my hate for all things bad technical.
I admit I'm just over there being like, wow, they've gotten more elaborate in their attempts to just pretend this isn't all Oahu. That they've made, it's been Iraq, it's been a southern prison, it's been Seoul, South Korea, and it's been Nigeria. They're just stretching the heck out of this island. Mm-hmm. Back in Jack's side of things, we also get him and Juliet are now officially flirting. I think it's this episode where Ben opens up and admits to Jack that the reason Juliet has been his primary contact is because she resembles his ex-wife, that's their way of getting inside his head. Doesn't really seem to slow Jack down and kind of getting more flirty and more bantery with Juliet.
Well, that's because, Ben, he's Dharma's matchmaker.
That is truly his calling.
I think so.
The Machiavellian plot maker thing takes a backseat to him putting couples together.
Ben loves love.
He does, clearly.
Matchmaking is just benevolent manipulation. If he just channeled it all there, he would have been fine.
That's true.
Man, that's very astute.
Think of the side series that we could have gotten with Ben Linus, going around the world, setting couples up through the power of cons.
What if his whole feud with Charles Widmore that's going to dominate most of season 4 and 5, what if all that had just been scaled down to Widmore doesn't want Desmond to date his daughter and Ben does want Desmond to date his daughter, and that's literally all that their fight is about?
I would have loved that. But to your point, Robert, they really hammer the point home when Juliet brings Jack his lunch, dinner, whatever it is, and sets it down on the table it's basically an elevated operating table that they've been using, and then just props herself up on there and sits down cross-legged and smiles and is all, bright eyes. And the chemistry between Juliet and Jack is already 10 times higher than the chemistry between Jack and Kate has ever been. And this is something that's going to plague poor Evangeline Lilly all the way up to the end of season 5. Because later, that actress is going to out charisma Kate once again by hooking up with Sawyer. Spoiler alert, sorry. But, yeah. She succeeds in all the ways Kate wishes she could.
I wish I could say poor Kate, but I can't.
No. Oh, this one's mine. Sorry. So later in the episode, Ben finally confesses to Jack that, yes, those were his x-rays. He does have a tumor on his spinal cord. He had an entire plan in place where he was going to manipulate Jack into, wanting, not just having to or being forced to operate on him, but actually wanting to do it. But all of that has been thrown out the window because he doesn't have long left to live. And
the genuine remorse in his voice, we had a great plan to break you. We were going to crush you psychologically. He sounds so sad that this plan will not work out the way he laid it.
Well, from a Ben point of view, like a Ben Linus point of view, look at all the trouble he went through convincing Sawyer that he had a tiny pacemaker. This had to have been like the greatest achievement of his life. Just the cork board with push pins and string on it. That he was like ticking off boxes. Yep, we got him here. We got him here. One more week, and we're gonna have Jack Shepherd on our shit. I'm dying, aren't I?
He's looking at Pickett and being like, if we cut his hair just right and put him in a black suit, would he look like Jack's dad from behind? We can do this. It's him or Alex.
But he confesses that on the day that he found out he was dying, a spinal surgeon literally fell out of the sky. Which he thinks was fate, and I wrote down here that now it's his turn to be the one mistaking coincidence for fate.
It does possibly, maybe this is me making a connection that doesn't need to exist, but way back in All the Best Cowboys Have Daddy Issues, after Jack is trying to chase down Ethan, who's kidnapped Claire and Charlie, and Ethan beats the living crap out of him and has Jack completely at his mercy. He gives Jack a warning and then leaves, which couldn't at all have been in the writer's head at the time, but it's an interesting idea that Ben might have actually given a directive saying, don't hurt this one too badly.
Yeah, I like that idea. Here we get another, kind of moment. I can't remember who it is, but I think it's the lady at the church in the flashback.
I think she's a doctor or something, or she works at
That-
like a local medical thing.
Yes. She tells Echo, "You're a good man too," in reference to his brother Yemi being called a good man. And of course, there's no way for him to, or for her to know that, he took over a mercenary crime outfit and has murdered a whole bunch of people.
He is literally wearing the suit that he just saw his brother get shot in. Like, he's come straight from the airfield for that.
And that's when I finally noted, as I said earlier in the episode, that this 3-episode batch runs entirely on dramatic irony.
We do eventually get a conversation because Echo, is in a cool shot, he stops at a creek to drink some water on the island, and we see the smoke monster appear over his shoulder in the reflection of the water. And then Locke catches up to him. They finally compare notes about their respective experiences with the monster. And Locke, because we only ever saw his face looking at the monster, we didn't see what he was seeing. And he describes it to Echo as a bright light. It was beautiful. And Echo, terse as always, just says, "That is not what I saw." Which also gives us some clarity as to why Locke looked so horrified in the season 1 finale when it appeared more smokily to him. We get more, I think, let's see, this was it Easter Sunday or the one after we were watching this?
It was the day
The
after.
day after, right,
Yeah.
the Monday after.
Easter Monday.
Echo had walled off the plane that his brother's body was in with rocks, and he and Locke roll the stones away. Echo goes into this plane that became his brother's tomb, and the tomb is empty. Ah!
Now, where has that happened before?
Well, it's funny. There was a discount cemetery in Alabama that was notorious. No. Yeah, they had clearly 3 seasons of symbolism, of Bible symbolism for Echo specifically, and they're just trying to just churn it all out right now.
Yeah, and this is where I wrote down Smokey the Body Snatcher. Because it's clear that this is where he was able to get that body to impersonate Yemi from.
I made this note, but I think it was something you said, because the flashback plot is a group of bandits in the area who were stealing vaccine, and that Yemi had worked out an arrangement that they could at least keep some. Echo decides he's going to stand up to them, which gets a random woman shot to prove their point. They come back again, and Echo just kills all of them, and then stumbles out of the church, covered in their blood, machete in one hand and a pistol in the other. And David, what did you say for this shot?
I don't remember. Was it the spinoff line?
I wrote that one down, but your thing is we get this shot over Echo's shoulder of everybody looking up and seeing him coming out, and you just went, "All right, which of you motherfuckers ain't coming to mass next week?"
Oh, man, I completely forgot about that. Yeah. I mean, there's a badass preacher, and then there's that. If it was me, I'd immediately have run up with a bill in my hand. Like, "I'm so sorry I missed the tithe. Here you go. I'll give more next week.
I've been stealing communion wafers. I'm going to vomit them up now in sorrow."
I was the one replacing the grape juice with real wine."
We didn't. I didn't write his name down, but the actor who plays like the leader of the bandits that Echo kills, I want to say his name is like Hakeem Kaikazem, but he's a character actor who was on Black Sails. He was one of the bad guys in 24. Really fun actor from, I think also from Nigeria originally, but he's done a lot of work in the UK and in the US. So just shout out to him, but I wish I'd written his name down. I mentioned it earlier, but yeah, I'm still at the point where I'm kind of enjoying Nikki and Paolo as, like, Paolo's the casual viewer who just, like, goes to use the bathroom while everybody else is trying to solve the mysteries of the hatch, and Nikki's the one who's, like, the message board crawler who's just like, "Wait a minute, there's, like, 6 screens in here. What if they're watching all 6 stations?" And Locke has to be like, "Oh, yeah, that does make sense."
Well, it's funny because Paolo literally is the one who goes to take a shit when they're down in the the viewing station. What's the name of that one? It's not the viewing station.
I think this is the question mark.
Is that question mark?
Yeah, because they found it in that episode.
That's right. And we'll find out what he was doing in there later in the one and only Nikki and Paolo-centric episode. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. I don't think he was actually taking a shit. But, yeah, he was the one in the bathroom while revelations were happening.
Well, Robert, you are most definitely a better man than I am, a better person than I am. I will hate these two enough for everyone. Don't worry.
You know, it makes me wonder, like, everyone, we pretty much knew going into these first 3 seasons, there was not a lot of love to be had for Boone and Shannon. There was not a lot of love to be had for Ana Lucia, not a lot of love for Nikki and Paolo. But I'm trying to remember, like, 4 through 6, who you're going to hate, or if anyone.
I can't wait to find out.
That Radzinski guy is kind of a douchebag.
Yeah. But before we get to Radzinski, Robert, why don't you set us up for this next one?
So while they're Saeed does some hot wiring and gets one of the other monitors working, and they see a room inside another hatch. And when they look up, there is a man with an eye patch suddenly staring back into the camera in a shot that made at least 2 people in our viewing jump up and go, ah! Because it is a great jump scare, revealing the face of Mikhail for the first time. Everybody's crazy, quasi-unkillable Russian psycho.
Every good story has one.
Yep. So we get a bit where Juliet comes into the partition between like the viewing room and where they're keeping Jack, and she tells him that she's going to put a movie on, and she is trying to out loud convince him that Ben is a good person and worth operating on. Meanwhile, on tape, she has recorded herself Love Actually style with a whole bunch of poster boards. Like,
it's actually less creepy than it was in Love Actually, but still pretty effective.
It's true. On the poster boards, she has written, like, "Don't believe anything I'm saying. Ben's a bad person. You can kill him in surgery. It's a tough surgery. No one will suspect. It'll look like an accident." And I wrote down, God damn. It's easy to forget after all of this build-up and all the flirting she's done with Jack. This is the woman who casually took Kate at gunpoint and had us all convinced she would have actually shot Kate if Sawyer hadn't backed down just a few episodes ago.
We've talked a lot about some of the problems with the female characters on this show, and it finally feels like in Juliet we've got a character who's allowed to have the layers and the unpredictability and just the sense of, like, oh, something is making this person tick, and I want to find out what it is, that so many of the great male characters have gotten, and with the exception of maybe Sun, you haven't really had with the ladies on this show.
No, but it turns out that murdering 3 people inside of a church is a really good way to deconsecrate it, because, like, the next day he leaves and is talking to the woman from earlier, and then a whole bunch of dudes show up and start nailing the doors and windows shut. And the lady tells Echo, "You owe Yemi a church." Now, that establishes why him and Charlie spent the back half of season 2 building that church, and why Charlie took up the work, kind of half-assedly on his own to finish it. But knowing that that's why he was building a church and then he abandoned it to take up Locke's quest of pushing the button makes that a whole lot harsher in hindsight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I did note that I think Smokey looks a lot better this season than he did at first.
Yeah, when he chases, he realizes that the thing that looks like Yemi he's been talking to is not, in fact, his brother, chases it into the forest and finds the smoke monster waiting for him, and gets smashed around a lot of trees. It looks very nasty and effective.
Yeah, now the CGI of the smoke monster himself looks better. Mr. Echo ragdolling as he's being tossed around doesn't look so great, but the end result is all the same. R.I.P. Mr. Echo. We'll never know where that story was supposed to go. I don't think the writers have ever been forthcoming about what their plan was and exactly. Narratively, like, we know, Robert already said the reason why the actor AAA wanted off the show. narratively, I think it does make a certain degree of sense with that last monologue that he has when he's telling not Yemi. The crux of the flashbacks is he needs to confess. Not Yemi, the smoke monster, is telling him he needs to confess. In the flashbacks, he was told that he needed to confess. And when the time comes to do it, Echo tells Smokey, not Yemi, that he has nothing to confess. Everything that he has done, he's done to survive. So narratively, I think that would be the moment where the smoke monster went, all right, I'm not going to get what I want out of this guy. He's already been able to manipulate both Jack and Locke with visions and breadcrumbs, and Echo is not going to be that guy. So cut your losses, smash him to death. It's honestly, that last monologue that he gives is beautiful. It's well written. It's wonderfully performed, and it's a great send off for the character as a wrapping up of his arc.
My theory, and this is pure speculation on my part, is I think that the role that of kind of the big players that Jack plays in the show's finale, in the show's endgame, that was always going to be Jack. What ends up being the roles of John Locke and Ben Linus, I think originally would have been Mr. Echo and John Locke. I think Locke would have played the role towards Jacob that Ben did, and I think that Echo would have been the role that Locke takes in the final season. I don't know that, and I'm sure it would have, like, if you'd asked the writers at the start of season 3 how they saw all this going, it would have looked very different. That is my thinking, that he would have had that role set up as kind of the opposing figure, because if nothing else, I think the show so wrapped up in like questions of faith and religious symbolism, putting its the form of its final antagonist in the body of a priest, I think would have been just something that would have been very appealing to the writer's room. But yeah, that last monologue, it's really powerful, and just honestly, for something that we said was kind of scraped together, it does feel weirdly satisfying, even as it's very sad and abrupt. But it does feel like we got the story of this character. And, you know, the last moments we get of him as he's fading away, we see an image of young Echo and young Yemi walking away together, holding each other. And it's a call forward to what the show's story is going to be for all of these characters in the end. The idea of death being the place where you come and you make your peace with the people who meant the most to you in your life.
And Cara, your thoughts?
Well, as I sit here trying not to do it again, I really hate being reminded I have feelings. Because, God, he was like my favorite character. Like, as short-timey as he was, yes.
Gone too soon.
Way too soon.
We get another image of the motif of a dead character's eyes being closed by somebody standing over them, as Locke does that to Echo. And when he's asked what Echo whispered to him with his dying breath, Locke turns and goes, "He said, 'We're next.'" Now, what that implies is that what Echo actually said was, "You're next." And Locke assumed he was talking in the plural to the whole group, but given that he's talking to John Locke, who is about to become the next big target of the smoke monster, that may not have been what Echo meant.
Yep. Well, I kind of just want to speed through this last one, not just because we're running longer than usual. We've been really good about coming in at right at an hour, but there was a lot to talk about with these first two episodes, 4 and 5. But now we're on episode 306, I Do.
Who do?
It's days 72 and 73 on the island. And it's a Kate episode, guys. And back in season 2, I said, I don't think we need any more Kate episodes. We found out everything we need to know about this character. And Robert said, but wait, don't you remember the episode where Kate gets married? And I said, Christ.
You blocked it from your memory.
I did. And my very first note about this episode was following up one of the most tragic episodes of this show with an inconsequential Kate episode. It feels cruel on the writer's part.
There are different types of tragedy.
This is the worst kind.
On the plus side, we get TV's Nathan Fillion as her brief husband.
Yep. Also a cop because irony.
Of course.
In that phase, let's see, this is before he got Castle and The Rookie, so he was just basically Mal Reynolds in search of another good TV role this time.
Yeah, this is post Firefly and Serenity.
We get a great line read from Matthew Fox when he basically breaks down to Ben just how serious his condition is and how badly he needs surgery, capping it off by saying, "You need to be in surgery yesterday." And Ben takes that in and goes, "All right, well, I'm ready whenever you are." And Jack just goes, "Oh, no, you don't understand. I didn't say I was going to do it. I just want you to understand how you're going to die." And he just gets really close to the glass and says it with this kind of slasher smile. And it's one of my favorite acting moments of Matthew Fox in this run. I'm just like, when did Jack become awesome again? Seriously.
I jumped the gun when I mentioned it a few seconds ago, but I wrote down serial criminal Kate is engaged to a cop and other hackneyed TV plots. Because, come on, like we're reaching for Kate stuff at this point.
To the extent that it works at all, it's just that Nathan Fillion, I mean, I'm not going to make this the whole thing, but he is a super charming actor, has the ability to make almost anything he says sound like it was Joss Whedon writing it at his best, even when it's just kind of bland romantic banter. He's really charming in this role. We also get the reappearance of Alex, who charges into the quarry where Kate and Sawyer are working with a slingshot, bouncing rocks off some people and trying to find Carl, the Sawyer's previous cage mate, who's been disappeared. I don't know how old the actress is. I know Alex is supposed to be like 15 years old, maybe 16. Yeah. Actress looks too old to be waving a slingshot at people. That's like a Bart Simpson level thing. I'm just like, no. You have a driver's license. You just it should at least be like a sling, like something you'd be whirling over your head and looking cool.
We've already seen that in order to be part of the others, you have to have extensive training with a bolo.
It's one of their most popular electives at Others Camp.
It's true. I made the joke because I sung it out loud, and then I realized, oh my God, it's true. Kate, the notorious criminal, is literally breaking rocks in the hot sun. She fought the law, and the law won. Oh God, I bet. I wonder if the actor or the writers of this episode realized that, and two, if they did, how many of them broke their hands patting themselves on the back? But we haven't gotten one of these in a while. We get a butt holster check-in with Juliet and that taser of hers that she loves so much. And then Cara.
Yeah, and I'm trying to... So... help me, because I'm
This is when they bring
struggling.
Kate down to where Jack's being held so she can convince Jack to do the surgery.
That's right, yeah. And I made the note, like, this has to be the final straw in the love triangle, right? Like, please, it is. Please tell me, someone. If she's crying because they're going to kill the other guy, you've lost. No pun intended.
Yeah, she breaks down and confesses to Jack that she said she was in love with Sawyer, and they're going to kill him if Jack doesn't do the surgery. And one would think, especially considering what happens later in the episode, that would be it. I hate to tell you this, Cara. The love quadrangle continues.
All right, when it gets up to be a love octagon, I'm out.
We get more song references as Kate tearfully confesses to Jack, "They're keeping me in a cage, despite all her rage."
Robert dropped that one on us and broke us for a solid 30 seconds.
That was great.
It was just, listeners, just the way he said it, like Kate says to Jack, "They're keeping me in a cage," and Robert went, "Despite all your rage?" It was, yeah.
Every now and then the spirits of Tom Servo and Crow T. Robot are just with me.
It's true. And I wrote down, it's the second time in 3 episodes that Kate has broken down crying hysterically, continuing to demystify badass, at this point, Schrodinger's badass Kate.
Yeah, that all she can do is beg her one boyfriend to do something for another guy so her other boyfriend doesn't get killed. That's just like we're not ever going to stop defining her by the men in her life.
Yeah, and I couldn't resist a good pun here because we see the flashbacks to her time married to Nathan Fillion, whose character I don't even fucking remember his name. He's inconsequential to the plot overall. They throw a thing in here. It's kind of a sadomasochistic angle of Kate's where she calls Edward Mars, the U.S. Marshal, again, and it's dumb. But anyway, like we see her making breakfast and shit, and I wrote down domesticated Kate is weirdly off-putting.
It's just not natural.
It's not.
And to be fair, that's supposed to be the point, that she's like, this is just not her life and she has to keep running. But yeah, it just feels so weird.
Yeah. And of course, we get another Sawyer nickname watch. He refers to Pickett as Blockhead. Because why not?
I will say that for all that we will and have crapped on the love quadrangle, Kate and Sawyer hooking up the cage is actually pretty steamy. And I think one of the things that makes it work so much is that Josh Holloway, who, you know, Sawyer's default mode is kind of this angry, hostile smolder towards everybody, but he does have this way of looking at Kate where his eyes just kind of go softer when he sees her. And you see a tender side of him in a way that, like, I mean, I'm a 36-year-old straight married man. That melts me a little bit just watching him. I'm just like, oh, man.
Did we even mention that episode 4 ended with the reveal that wasn't an actual pacemaker? They literally just made an incision in Sawyer's chest and then sewed it up and told him he had a pacemaker.
I think we mocked the concept. I don't know if we mentioned that specific reveal.
Yeah, there was no pacemaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that this all gives Sawyer the chances to be romantic. We've already seen how he gave away his portion of the money that he earned to Clementine, and here he actually does tell Kate that he loves her. So sweet. Jack at one point sees that the door to his cell is open, so he goes outside, and conspicuously there is no one around. And there's another door cracked open, and he goes inside, and it's Ben's security room where he gets to watch everyone else. And wouldn't you know it, the door to the gun cabinet is also open. So Jack gets to go and get a gun and arm himself. But before he can leave, what does he see on the security monitor? Kate and Sawyer hooking up, at which point Ben comes into the room and confronts him, and Jack agrees that he will go ahead and perform Ben's surgery.
Just so he can get off the damn island.
Yes. Damn it, Jack. It wasn't that long ago that Ben told you he had a complicated plan to make you want to do the surgery. And here you go ahead and fall for Ben's complicated plan to make you want to do the surgery.
It's not stated explicitly. It is possible that from this, like from the very word go, Jack had his plan of what he was going to do at the end of the episode. Like maybe he came up with that on the fly, or maybe he realized what he could do in this moment and just came up with the whole plan from there. But either way, for Ben had to be kind of high-fiving himself behind the back there, like, boom, backup manipulation. He scores.
Shortly after that, somebody, I think it's Pickett, says out loud as they're passing by one of the cages, Shepard wasn't even on Jacob's list. Which,
what?
Yeah. One, what's Jacob's list? We don't know at this point. Two, if you've seen the final season, Jack is pretty prominently on Jacob's list. So I know it's a retcon, but like, wow, that's a hell of a fucking thing to have to retcon.
If I remember right, by the end of this season, it is confirmed that, like, we hear a little bit more about Jacob, but it's confirmed that Ben doesn't actually have any contact with Jacob, that he's just sort of passing down edicts and claiming they're what Jacob wants. So that could be like what Ben has conveyed, but not actually the truth of what Jacob's doing. So a bit of a retcon, but within this season, they give us a way out for that.
Yeah.
We also get a moment, super dramatic, where Pickett while Ben's under anesthesia, he decides he's just going to go murder Sawyer, goes out to the cage. There's a scuffle. Sawyer gets a hold of a gun. He and Pickett are both holding guns on each other, and one of the other guys puts a gun on Kate. And Sawyer's clearly deciding whether or not to drop the gun and probably let himself be killed or risk Kate getting hurt, and Kate's shouting at him, "Don't you let go, don't you give up." And I'm just thinking, a few seasons down the road, Sawyer is going to be screaming those words at a woman that he loves, and just like he does now, that person is not going to listen to him. I literally, because my wife, who has not watched the show to the end, we are finally caught up to the point where she has seen, and so she's watching new episodes now. I don't want to foreshadow too much for her, but I did say, like, remember those lines. Remember those lines being spoken to Sawyer, because,
Yeah. Well, we spent a lot of time talking about my pet peeves with firearms, and here Danny Pickett falls into violation of one of the universal laws of holding someone at gunpoint. Make sure that the gun's fucking loaded. There's a lot of dramatic tension here when him and Sawyer are holding each other at gunpoint, and Kate doesn't want Sawyer to give up, but if he doesn't, Kate's going to get shot. So finally he gives up and lets Pickett take him outside, at which point Pickett jacks around into that gun, and I'm just like, well, you were never in any fucking danger, Sawyer. God damn it. Granted, he didn't know that, but still, Pickett, if you're going to hold somebody at gunpoint, listeners, if you're ever going to hold somebody at gunpoint, make sure there's a bullet in the fucking chamber.
We do eventually find out what Jack's scheme is. He deliberately nicks one of Ben's internal organs and just says that if they don't let Kate and Sawyer go and give them at least an hour's head start, he's going to let Ben bleed to death, which causes Tom to call Pickett and keep him from killing Sawyer. In a very nice touch, Tom actually looks like he's on the verge of tears when he calls Pickett, which for, Mr. Friendly, who's been like this big, intimidating guy, to reveal how much Ben means to the others, not just Juliet, who's ready to move against him, and Pickett, who just seems like a ball of fury, but to have Tom, who just seems really horrified at the idea that Ben might die, it sets another level to the stakes in a very nice way.
It really does. But once again, Jack is on the walkie-talkie with Kate, telling her that her and Sawyer need to run, and Kate won't fucking do it. That's the one thing you're good at, Kate. Anyway, that wraps up episode 306. The relevant dates haven't changed a lot because, like I mentioned in previous episodes, this would be around the time of year when they would take a break. But on March, in close proximity to these, on March 30th, 2005, 20 years ago was The Greater Good. Go ahead, Cara.
The Greater Good.
Thank you. That's episode 121. March 29th, 2006, SOS. That's episode 219. Around this time, jumping ahead of where we're at, episode 318 on April 18th was DOC. March 20th, 2008, The Shape of Things to Come, episode 409. April 15th, 2009, episode 514, The Variable.
Oh.
And then April 13th, 2010, a little over 15 years ago, episode 613, The Last Recruit. So, something that I messaged Robert and Cara about in the lead up to this was there's a lot of discussion about what people remember about Lost. And I was trying to think of, like, what are the commonalities? What are the things that everyone can agree that people remember, not just us, but as a whole, Lost fans remember, or just watch Lost viewers remember about this show. So we all came up with the top 5 things, and we didn't share this with each other because I'm really interested to see what our overlap is, what I didn't think of that you guys did, or what we were all like on the same page about. So Robert, why don't you go first? What you consider 5 things that everyone remembers about Lost?
So this is not in any particular order. I would say the first one is we have to go back. Bearded, hysterical Jack shouting that. The second one, Jack arriving on the beach in the pilot, just that image of the plane wreckage and Jack running around as people are screaming in terror. Number 3, the ending scene in Walkabout when John Locke flashes back to climbing to his feet for the first time. Number 4, not Penny's boat, the image of that written on a hand. And then number 5, the final gathering in the church, just the final farewell that we have.
Cara, what about you?
So the first thing, of course, that came to my mind was not Penny's boat. Like, I think that I will remember that till I die, I'm quite sure. I also thought the hatch implosion, where like everything turns like that purpley white, like that was just such a galvanizing moment, kind of for me at least. Another thing I think is the Dharma Initiative, just as a whole. You know, the little symbol and all the hatches. Benjamin Linus, I think he is quite memorable. And the last thing I put down was whether they loved or hated the finale.
Yeah, nice.
David, what you got?
My top 5. So we're all very different. There's a lot of things for people to remember about the show. The one thing that I think we've agreed on, Robert, you and I, is we have to go back. Was my number one thing that most viewers are going to remember about this show. But the others, just because it was a sticking point with my wife Katie for so long, the polar bear on a tropical island, the smoke monster, Michael shouting, "Walt!" and then Desmond in that beautiful Scottish brogue, "I'll see you in another life, brother."
Nice.
I wasn't even going to attempt to do that dialect. So that's it. Those are those 3 episodes. We'll be back again next week with 7, 8, and 9. Social media and or what are you reading or doing right now?
I am listening to an audiobook of C.S. Lewis's The Great Divorce. It's a wonderful and powerful book.
Oh, wonderful. I'm listening to an audiobook of Stephen King's Skeleton Crew.
Ooh.
Nice. I'm dissociating from the world at large by playing a lot of Marvel Rivals online. And if you really want to follow me, you can do that on Instagram at DBHensley. If you want to keep up with Long Walk Productions, you can visit us online at longwalk.us to see more of our original work or hear past episodes that are no longer streaming. You can follow the YouTube links in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening, and if you enjoy this show or any of the shows on the Long Walk Podcast Network, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening on.